Good morning. Welcome to Walk Before You Run. Today, God has been talking to me. Have you ever been in a conversation with God and you want to be like the kids in the school when the teacher calls on the kid that's playing to answer the question and they do this? You talking to me? That's the way I was this morning. Um, I had to say, "What? God, are you talking to me?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm talking to you." And so he had me to turn to John 6. So if you can turn to John 6. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I tell you, I got my behind spanked by God this morning. But he was talking to me, and my excuse was I don't get on because a lot of times people not on there, and I'm on there by myself. And he said, but I'm talking to you. I had to laugh at myself because I was like that kid in school who you playing, and God is trying to get your attention because He's trying to give you something, He's trying to give you something that's going to enrich your life. And I wasn't paying attention because sometimes we think that uh God is giving a word for somebody else, but He's given a word for you this morning for me. And I have been praying about some things. I'm going to get into John 6, but I have been praying about some things. And this morning, God told me, stop, stop being in a hurry. I want you to pay attention. Pay attention to the prayers that have been answered. And He said, and I want you to jot them down. Don't just think them. I want you to put this down on paper. The prayers that you have prayed that I have answered for you. Not in the past 60 something years, but not even in the past year. But what have you been praying for lately? And I have answered. And so I jotted some things down. I didn't jot down all the things, all the answers that He has given me, but I jotted down a few. And they weren't for Him, they were for me. And then I was reading something and I said, well, I'm going to go from here. And God said, no, you're going to go where I take you. And that's where you're going to come from. And He said, go to John 6. And I looked at it and I'm like, Jesus, feast of 5,000. I think I've already talked about something like that. And He said, no, you haven't talked about what I want you to talk about today. You haven't talked about what I want you to hear today, because this is to me. Every time I come on this platform, it's for me. That's what God was telling me. It's for me. It doesn't matter if somebody else gets on. It doesn't matter if it's just you and me. This is me speaking to you. And sometimes speaking to you is for you. Sometimes it's not me speaking through you. Sometimes it's me speaking to you. And so you have to always be present. You have to always be there to hear what He has to say. And I'm trying to keep from crying because God is just, if we are present, and I don't mean physically, I mean mentally and spiritually, emotionally present, God has a present for us. And so I'm going to read, but the whole thing is not the focus, but I'm going to read. Excuse me a second. My apologies. Okay, so it says, after these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias, and a great multitude followed Him because they saw His miracles, which He did on them that were diseased. And Jesus went up into a mountain, and there He sat with the disciples. And the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was nigh. Excuse me, it was, good morning. That means that it was getting ready to come. They were getting ready to celebrate the feast of the Passovers. And when Jesus then lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him. He said unto Philip, whence shall we buy bread that these may eat? And this he said to prove him. And that word prove means to test him. This is not testing God, testing Jesus. This is testing Philip. For he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 penny worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said unto him, there is a lad here which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. But what are they among so many? Now they've been walking with Jesus. They've known what he has done, but they still ask the question, how can we do such a massive work with so little? I'm trying to contain myself. Um, and Jesus said, make the men sit down. Now there was much grass in the place. So the men sat down in number about 5,000. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down. I want to stop there because I want to focus on what Jesus did. Jesus gave it to the disciples. I'm going to repeat that. Jesus gave it to the disciples. So sometimes God will give us things, give us a word, and he's given it to us. Now, what do we do with it? What do we do with it? Now, the disciples could have sat down because it wasn't that much, thinking, what are we going to do with this? They could have sat down and just fed themselves first and said, whatever is left, we'll share it with everybody else. But they were obedient to Christ. They were obedient. They did what he said do. Not because they understood it all, not because they could see the end of the matter, not because they had seen it before, but they did it because he said, do it. And that's what Jesus was speaking to me today. He said, do it because I said, do it. So we can't turn around trying to look and see who God might be talking to, who that word might be for. But if the word goes forward, you receive the word, because sometimes that word is for you. Sometimes that word is a test to see what are you going to do with what God has given you. Because the disciples did what Jesus told them to do. And he gave thanks. He took the bread, he gave thanks, and then he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples distributed to them that were set down. Now Jesus didn't spell, okay, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go take this little piece right here, I want you to give it to those people over there. He gave it to them, and they knew what he desired, because he asked them. He said, if you go up, he says, Jesus, it says in 3, Jesus went up into a mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. And the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was nigh. And when Jesus then lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, he said unto Philip, when shall we buy bread that these may eat? So they knew his intention. He had just asked them the question, so how are we going to feed all these people? So what do we have? We have a treasurer. We have some money. So, what do we have, you guys, that we can help the multitude? And so I love that they listened. And that's what sometimes I'm going to have to do a better job of. When God is speaking to me, I'm going to have to stop being in a hurry thinking I know what he wants me to do and go run and do something. But I'm going to have to be still and listen. Be still and listen. And not just listen, but pay attention and see what God is doing. so that we can celebrate in the goodness of God, so that we can follow his leadership, follow his pattern. Because the first thing Jesus did before he started trying to feed the multitude, it said that he gave thanks. So if he's not going to try to do things without getting a word from the Father, who am I to try to move, to try to make decisions that the Father has not given me instructions on? And when he gives me instructions, even if I'm by myself, even if you're by yourself, you do what God tells you to do and watch it blossom into something that you could not even fathom. Because it says right here, I want you to go back and look at me. Look at this with me. It says, and Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fish as much as they would. And that word would just means as much as they wanted. When they were filled, he said to his disciples, gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. Ugh, if we are obedient and allow God to bless people through us, when we gather up the fragments that are left over, it's going to be more than enough. It's going to be more than enough. And so I'm just so grateful that God said to me, hey, sit down, do what I told you to do. And I did not do like in times past. You talking to me? No, I knew he was talking to me. I knew he was speaking to me. And so I sat down and I looked at where he told me to look, and he blessed me. So even though I'm sharing this with you, when I gather up the fragments of what God has given out this morning, I am going to have more than enough. More than enough to get me through the day, more than enough to get me through the year, more than enough to get me through life. Thank you for joining me this morning. So good to see you, my sister. Thank you, my brother, for joining. I look forward to seeing you again. And all I can do is give you some words of encouragement to walk through God's word by yourself, with someone. It doesn't matter as long as you are present in mind, present in the word, so that God can give to you. And know that whatever he gives you, if you share what he gives you, the fragments that are left will be more than enough. I'll see you next time. Don't forget that we are all blessed so that we can be a blessing to someone else. I love you. Bye.